Last two verses that I've been meditating on is Matthew 10:19-20. Do not worry about what to say or how to say it. At the time you will be given what to say, for it will not be you speaking, but the Spirit of your Father speaking through you. In 2 Timothy 1:7, for the Spirit God gave us does not make us timid, but gives us power, love, and self-discipline. I just pray that you can use us as your vessels, as your messengers to touch somebody on the other side, listening to our stories and the messages that we have today. And we can grow a stronger relationship in the process. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Amen.
All right. Well, we got a little crowd here this morning. So thanks everybody for coming, and Kallup for jumping on. I just want to start out by hearing your story. We've known each other for a little while. We've done Bible studies, runs together. We broke a Guinness World Record together. But we never really got to dive into each other's stories. And I've had multiple people tell me, hey, you're going to connect a lot with Kallup. You really got to hear his story. So tell everybody a little bit who you are, what you do, and how you got here.
Man, y'all buckle up. We're gonna be here for a minute. Yeah, so I'm Kallup McCoy II, from Cherokee, North Carolina. And honestly, dude, I'm honored. I'm honored to be here. I know that Jordan, our friend Jordan Utley, he was preparing me for this conversation. He was telling me, like, be ready to go deep because Gabe's going to throw some stuff at you, which I'm ready for. I'm looking forward to. But yeah, man, I mean, what I do now for work is I'm a full-time run coach and personal trainer, and also the co-founder of a nonprofit called Rezhope Recovery Consulting, where our focus is helping men struggling with mental health issues and substance use disorder. And so we've got a program back home it's a recovery home called the Gadoogie House, and Gadoogie in our language is community, and it's coming to help the need of another without hesitation. And so that's what my wife Caitlin and I are all about, trying to serve, help build other people up. I think we'll get into it in just a minute, but you have an obligation when you come out of something to turn around and help other people that's still in the fire, that's still in the trenches, that's still struggling. And that's how we're here today, and that's how we started the nonprofit. God really put that on my heart.
Yeah, not only we have an obligation, I would say it actually can sometimes be the completion to our healing journey. Like, without that step of actually extending what we've been through, we may not actually have achieved that optimal level of healing. So take me back to your story. I've seen some of your posts. We're connected on social media. I don't know if it was heroin or meth, but I know there was some hard drugs involved in your past, and now you're breaking all kinds of records with running and inspiring others to do the same. So take me back there as far as the lowest low of your story and how you got there and how you got out of it.
Well, I guess I want to just preface all that and start out with just growing up in Cherokee. I think I hit the jackpot when it comes to things that really led me to going down that path, as far as like environment, opportunity, and genetics. It was just all around me, growing up, seeing my family partying, doing drugs, dealing drugs, but also too on the other side of that, I had some really amazing parents. My mom, Ruth, and my dad, Kallup Sr., man, they were incredible, provided a lot of love, support, gave me everything that I wanted. Honestly, it led me to a sense of entitlement, which would honestly just really cause a lot of struggles in my life, because they came from nothing and they wanted me to have everything. And so I didn't have that sense of like struggling for and working towards something. And I really believe that definitely was a detriment to me, to my character, to my development and things like that. But at 11 years old, I started to get migraine headaches. And so my mom took me to the doctor, and they prescribed a narcotic. At 11 years old, it was a nasal spray. And pretty much immediately after taking that prescription drug, I became addicted. Mm-hmm. And I think, like, obviously it was the way that it made me feel. It was this escape. It was this euphoria. And when I say escape, like, the things that I was seeing at home, my sister was running away a lot. She was getting mixed in the drug scene early on. My mom and dad they would fight. They'd split up. They had different partners along the way, and bounced around a little bit around that time. My mom had picked us up and moved us out west to the West Coast on a whim. That was right before I started using prescription drugs. But just just a lot of chaos, a lot of just the toxic relationship and environment that they had. And I think whenever that drug was presented to me, it helped me to deal with that reality, escape that reality.
Mm-hmm.
And so sports has always been a saving grace in my life. Sports has always been something that obviously surrounded me around a good community, helped me to work, develop a good work ethic. And around that time, I started to I loved playing basketball growing up, but I started to run my seventh grade year. And, where I am today and how I started then is just night and day. My first year of running, I was the second to worst on the team. And I struggled with that, tried to quit, tried to tell my mom I didn't want to go back to practice because I sucked. And she wouldn't let me quit. 8th grade year, I come back, and I win the conference championship in cross country. And just fell in love with running then. So I go into high school. I get mixed up in the partying scene a little bit more, start playing football, start going to parties after football games. And, I was kind of just skating by, grades were dropping. I'm hanging out with, shady crowd, party scene and everything. And my junior year of football, one of my buddies, right before we played our first game of the season, actually, we were almost to the stadium, and he has a bag of meth. And we're 16 years old, mind you. He has a bag of meth, and he was like, dude, this is basically like Yellow Jackets, which are, everybody knew what Yellow Jackets. You buy them in the gas station or whatever, get you hyped up. He was like, "This is going to help us play like Superman," and I didn't think anything of it. Like, I didn't know anything about what this was. Didn't ask any questions. I was like, "Yeah, dude, let's do it." Put in our water bottles, mix it up, and went out and had a good game. And so I was like, "Oh, there's something to this."
That's how you can digest meth. You
you can do it all kinds of ways.
Put it in water.
yeah, you can put it in
Dilute
water, breaks down, drink it. Eventually, that turned into a little bit harder.
Were you not scared of it? Because obviously the stigma is like, okay, stay away from the harder drugs.
There wasn't any stigma back then. It was the thing to do with the people I was hanging out with.
So you weren't scared of it or anything? You were just like, all right,
no,
that's what we do.
Yeah.
Were you smoking weed before?
Yeah, I was smoking weed. Honestly, I mean, I used to get one of my friends I grew up with. He would steal weed from his stepdad, and we were like 11, 12 years old, getting high. But my struggle with drugs was kind of like this up and down. It's like this roller coaster. I would get away from it for a while. I guess probably looking back, it's probably like in my sports seasons, and then like on weekends or stuff, I might party or whatever and do some drugs. But yeah, so we start using meth, and like my 4th game that season, we're on the field doing warm-ups, and I'll go to one of my buddies, and I thought my heart was going to explode. Like, I felt I was going to have a heart attack. And my shoulder pads were like vibrating. You could visibly see my shoulder pads. My heart was beating so hard and so fast. And that scared me. I keep doing it though. Do it the next week. I take the SAT, and I've been up all night on meth. And I remember taking the SAT, and I'm sitting there trying to answer questions, and I'm coming down, I don't have any more, and I'll fall asleep on the desk taking my SAT. And, it was like I didn't have anybody try to lead me down a different direction. Give me some wisdom, give me some guidance. And
discipline.
Didn't have a mentor or anybody. And I started to hide it, started to cover it up, because then I'm like, man, this is getting out of control, but I can't tell anybody. So, I barely, my senior year, it gets bad enough to where I'm not showing up for classes or anything. I ultimately get kicked off the basketball team. Around that time, I had the opportunity to go play at the next level, play football or run track. But when I got kicked off the team, those offers were taken off the table. So my identity was an athlete, and then when that was completely taken from me, I'm like, well, who am I now? And so the only thing that was giving me comfort and that escape was the drugs. And so I dive harder into that. Barely graduate high school, have my first son, Hayden. when I was 19. Split up with his mom, get another girl pregnant, had my second son 1 year later, almost to the day, Kallup the third. And at this point in time, Gabe, it was getting so out of control. Partying, snorting pills, doing all the party drugs, ecstasy. Used to come down to Atlanta all the time and go pick up a bunch of X. And, it just getting really, really out of control. I couldn't show up for my friends, my family. Couldn't hold down a job. Around that time, I bought a concrete pump. And so I come from a family of carpenters. And I wanted to take a different direction. I was like, I don't want to be a carpenter, so I'll pump concrete. And built my own business. Had it for about 3 years. Started doing real well with it. And then the drugs, just started taking that away, right? You can't have both. And so ultimately, the bank took my concrete pump because I wasn't showing up for jobs, or I was showing up to jobs high, wasn't doing a good job. And I don't tell this part of my story a lot, but after my concrete pump got repoed, I was like, I'm going to go to basic law enforcement training. Mind you, I got this raging addiction, right? I go to BLET 2.5 months in, getting ready to order my firearm. I'm still I'm snorting cocaine back home with my dad and all my family members, cousins, uncles, everything, partying. And then I'd get up in the morning, I'd go to BLET after partying all night. And you could fail 3 classes, and then they cycle you back through. So I failed my 3rd class like the day before I ordered my firearm. I was like, all right. The only intention that I had with that, Gabe, was to be a dirty cop. Like I was wanting to steal people's drugs, take their money, just, like that. That was my whole goal with that journey. But, God definitely took me a different path there, and I'm glad that door was shut. Because I'd probably be doing some time right now had that happen.
So you were straight up doing drugs with the whole fam. Everybody was partying together. Yeah. What was that like?
So my dad and I, and Caitlin, she's like, she'll say, why don't you talk about that more? And I think there's a little bit of shame there, because people are like, well, why would your dad do drugs with you? And now, like, dissecting things and looking back on it, my dad used to party with my grandpa. It was drinking, smoking weed, things like that. But obviously, as time passes, the drugs become harder, more accessible. So then it was like, with me and my dad, it was snorting cocaine and drinking. And that was the norm, man. That was how a lot of our relationship was. So anyways, I go back to BLET for the second time, walk in the first day, and the sergeant over the program comes in, and he calls me out. He's like, you got to come to my office. Go down to his office, and he was like, you can't be here. You have to leave right now. I was like, what are you talking about? He said, we just got a call from Cherokee PD that you're under investigation for distribution of cocaine. And I was like, how dare you guys? Like, I was, all pissed off and everything, like I wasn't doing it. Yeah. So then I, get kicked out of BLET for the second time. And this is when I'm early 20s, 20, 21, somewhere around that age. Like I said, man, I couldn't hold down a job. Back home, we get per capita check. So every 6 months, we get a stipend from the casino. And that's distributed to us. That's actually built up in a trust fund. And so when I turned 18, I got $37,000.
Why?
From our casino, the revenue from our casino generates.
What casino, though?
Harris Cherokee Casino.
They just give it to all the
enrolled members. Yeah. So right now, like, my son will be getting like $250,000 next year. But he won't get it all at one time. It's increments now.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But back then, you got a lump sum. Whatever was built in that trust. So you give a kid that's 18 years old, got this addiction going on, like, it's just not, it's not going to work out well. So I was at the end of that money, and I couldn't hold down a job again. Like I said, I'd work for a couple weeks, get my first paycheck, and I wouldn't go back. I was just trying to get money to fuel my habit. So my dad, who he lived above me. My mom, she was in a different. She had a new husband. He got diagnosed. My dad got diagnosed with cancer around that time, and I remember, like, we'll put up these barriers and say, I've got things under control as long as I don't do this, you know? And the thing that I would always tell myself is, as long as I'm not shooting up, then everything's cool. I got this under control. It's not a bad thing. And when I got that news about my dad, it was just like, screw it, you know? I was like, I'm going to shoot up because snorting pills is not doing it for me anymore. And I've got these moments throughout my story where I really believe it was God knocking on my heart, God really trying to intervene in my life and pull me a different direction. And one of those moments was the first time I ever had a syringe. I've got a pill loaded, and I'm sitting in the bathroom, and I'm staring at the syringe, and my son, who's 5, Kallup, started knocking on the door. And like, I'm at this crossroads moment, right? And I'm just staring at it, man, because I'm like, I can't believe it. I'm getting ready to do this. And so he starts to knock on the door, and I lay a towel at the bottom of the door, and I told him I'll be out in a minute. He's like, what are you doing in there, Dad? And I was like, I'll be out in a minute. And I shot up for the first time, and the amount of shame and despair and hopelessness that I felt in that moment was just consuming, and it was so heavy. And I was like, I'll never be anything other than a junkie, you know, because I'd seen all the potential, all the ability that God had given me and everything, and it was just, I was just going down on this downward trajectory really fast.
Before we continue on that, because I definitely want to dive into that, what I felt on my heart to ask is, like, somebody that's listening is struggling with that doubt of, like, not thinking that they can transform that situation that they're in, whether it's drugs or just a negative habit or a negative lifestyle or situation that they're in. What could you share for them that can help transform that situation, or what worked for you?
You know, I really believe that the ego keeps us from reaching out and asking for help. And true strength and courage is the ability to show weakness and raise your hand.
Amen. Just because it's open, I'll share it here, but this is one of my most passionate takes, which is that everything that God wants for us is on the other side of our ego and pride, and just literally asking somebody for help. And a lot of times it's in asking the people that are actually directly, closely connected to us. It's not some internet stranger or some mentor that we can't get access to. It's in the relationships that we have access to, or the communities that we can go to. Go to a church if you don't know anybody. Go to a run club. Even family members, maybe a couple steps ahead of you. But Proverbs 11:2, I was just reading this right before you came in. When pride comes, then comes disgrace, but with humility comes wisdom. So what we really want is wisdom. And you wanted wisdom in that time to understand, because you were in that situation because you didn't have the confidence and self-esteem about yourself to be able to rise to another level. But really what the difference was wisdom. But you had access to wisdom if you were just willing to humble yourself, have humility, and ask. But pride was obviously in the way of that. So I think that's a great answer.
Amen. Yeah.
And then what happened? So you have all this shame. Your son's outside the door.
Yeah. So around that time, I was still keeping my son. And mind you, I didn't have a relationship, and I was never there for my oldest son. His mom, for good reason, just kept him from me because of, you know, my choices and my decisions at the time. But my youngest son was living with me and staying with his grandma on his mom's side. But when that happened, I mean, I actually took him down there and just never went back and got him. And that's not something I share a lot, but it was just that desire and that hunger and that thirst for the drugs and also too, like, the shame that I was experiencing. I knew that I couldn't take care of him, and I knew that he was a lot safer where he was at. And so I just didn't want him exposed to those things either.
This is a good take too, or conversation. I talk about this a lot with addiction with guys that I coach and help and mentor, is the power of consciously battling our demons, because our demons have the potential to overpower our own personal physical love. And we may think, oh, I love this person, whether it's a son or a child or a marriage even, and they think like an alcoholic. They're like, if you really loved your wife, you would stop drinking. It's like, yeah, it's not that simple. Because I look at certain addictions as actually a supernatural evil spirit, like a demon. So that's what you are battling in that sense. And I think it's related there of obviously you loved your son, but when because I talk about how it goes from first a bad habit or even an interest or even getting exposed, then it becomes something you're interested in, then it becomes a bad habit, then it becomes a dependency, then it becomes an addiction, then it becomes at the highest level something spiritual as like a demon, to where it consumes you and you're devoted to it as far as part of your identity, and you feel like removing that addiction is breaking down a part of your identity. And so it's not as simple as just, oh, I need to make the decision to stop doing it. But we get so consumed by it, which is obviously the level that you got.
Absolutely.
Okay. And then was there a rock and bottom moment as far as when you hit the lowest point and you had to change everything?
So I moved in with my dad with the intention of helping to take care of him while he was battling cancer. That was obviously a terrible idea because I couldn't even take care of myself. So how could I look out for my dad? And he knew that I had this addiction, right? And he would often tell me that I needed to go get help. And he would drop things on me like, son, like, remember your name. And it wasn't like being named after him. It was Kallup from the Bible. That's where our name comes from. It's just spelled differently. And he's like, he would say that to me, but I never leaned into that, and I never pursued who Kallup was in the Bible. And so yeah, he would speak he'd speak wisdom over me and encouragement and everything, but at the same time, like I would almost make him feel bad because I was sick, and so he had pain pills, and he would give them to me so I wasn't sick and hurting. And in his mind, he's like thinking he's helping me out, right? And I wish that he just would have committed me or something, like intervened that way. But it got to the point to where I started to steal his pain medication. I would wait until I lived upstairs bedroom, and I would hear him go into the bathroom, and he was nauseous and sick from his chemo treatments. And I would come down the steps, and I would like army crawl across the floor, and he'd keep his pills in his safe, which I figured out the code, or in his pillowcase, and I'd go in there and I'd steal my dad's pills. I ended up, getting to his checkbook, writing a bunch of checks. They found me out. The bank called him. I started packing my bags one day, and he started crying. Okay, he called me downstairs, and he was crying. And mind you, like I'm watching my dad wither away. He's this big, strong man. Just watch him break his back providing for us and earning the money by the sweat of his brow. And then I'm just watching him barely able to get up out of the recliner and go to the bathroom. And, he called me in there that day though, and he was like, son, I really want you to get help. He's like, I want you to become the man that I know you can be. And I didn't, and ultimately my mom had to move him out of the house because I just couldn't be trusted with him anymore. She moved him over with her and her husband. That's how bad it got. And I isolated myself. The drugs, the demon, that isolated me from the people that I loved. Like I just wouldn't go around anybody. The shame, just being strung out and didn't want people to see me. So my dad, he's given 6 months to live, and he fights for 3 years. Right at the end of his life, the nurse was telling him, like, you're a strong man, like you're a fighter. Why are you fighting so hard? And he was like, because I want to see my son become the man that I know he can be. A couple of days before he passes away, I'm standing at his bedside, and he calls me in to talk to me. He won't talk to anybody else. And I remember standing there, and I'm holding his hand and looking at him. And he said, son, you're going to come out of this one day, and you're going to do some great things for our family, for our community, and for the world. And That's such a prophetic word, because here I am sweating and withdrawing, and all I can think about is the next high. And I'm thinking to myself, no, I'm just a worthless junkie. And that's all I'm ever going to be. But God was speaking through my dad in that moment, and it wouldn't come to pass for a really long time, right? But 2 days later, again, one of those crossroads moments. I'm in the bathroom connected to this hospice room, and I can hear my dad's heart rate monitor beeping, and it flatlines. And I'm shooting up, got a needle in my arm when my dad leaves this earth. And I pull it out of my arm.
In the hospital.
In the hospital. And I wipe the blood off my arm, and I walk out of the hospital room, or the bathroom, and I go over to him and give him a kiss on the forehead. And I was so sick in that moment that this was his chain. I was looking at his chain, and I was wondering who was going to get my dad's chain, because I had every intention of getting that chain and selling it. That's how sick I was. My dad just freaking died, man, and that's what I was thinking. And that's how it was consuming me, man, and controlling me. And I call my drug dealer, walk out of the hospital, literally call my drug dealer, or go to the casino and meet them and go get more pills. And I wish I could say that was the moment, but it wasn't. But that was a really, really big point in my life, because now the shame was so bad that I didn't want to be here anymore. And everything that I experienced, and all the mistakes and everything, and the despair and the hopelessness that I was experiencing, made me want to kill myself. And so I tried to commit suicide by overdose on several occasions. And you can't make this up, man. 2016, I load up a rig, and it's got enough heroin and meth mixed in it, and I'm like, this is probably going to kill me. And
sorry, what's a rick?
It's a needle, syringe. Got this rig loaded up.
Rig, got it.
And I'm staring at it. I'm in the bathroom, and I'm like, yeah, this is probably going to kill me. Like, screw it. Shoot up, go into immediate overdose. Everybody leaves but two people, the girl that I was with and a guy that I grew up with.
Where were you?
At my house, at my dad's house. He left it to me. They throw me in a bathtub, start throwing ice water on me, trying to bring me back. Call the ambulance, call the paramedics. They get there, start working on me. They give me Narcan. I'm not coming back. My eyelids are blue, my lips are blue, my ears are blue. I've been without a pulse for several minutes, and the ER doctor, or the paramedic, calls the ER doctor, and she's like, he's unresponsive. We can't get him to come back. And he said, if you got more Narcan, continue to work on him. So she does, and finally get me to bring me to there, and I wake up and I'm combative. I'm in immediate overdose, feel like crap, and I just tell everybody I don't need help. Get the hell out of my house, and run everybody off. Little did I know, though, Gabe, that 3 years later, that the paramedic who saved my life would become my mother-in-law. That was Caitlin's mom before we even got together. And yeah, dude. I had multiple warrants. 2017, early, so like a few months after that happened, finally arrest me, give me a bond of $180,000. Wasn't going to make that bond. So I'm sitting in jail, just cooling my heels, and I'm like, I'm not going anywhere. First couple weeks, I'm drying out, starting to become clear-minded. Still talking about the same stuff. Can't wait till I get out, ripping and running, hitting the streets, whatever. About 2 weeks into my stay, though, something starts to shift in my heart, in my spirit, and I know it's like just that clarity, and God just really starting to work on me. Growing up, we never went to church. Faith was not something big in our house. The only time I ever heard about anything in the Bible was when my dad would say it to me about my name. And so 2 weeks into my doing my time, I start to write out a prayer for the first time in my life. And I'm writing out this prayer, and I'm like, I still have the paper at home. And I was calling out to God. I'm like, God, if you're real, show me that my dad's still with me somehow. And it's God was using that deepest hurt and pain and shame that I experienced of what I had done to my dad to set me free. In that moment, I didn't see it then, right? So I write this prayer out, and I lay my pen down, and I walk upstairs to grab something, and I come back down, and a pastor walks in, and I first lay eyes on him, and it stops me in my tracks because it's such a striking resemblance of my dad. He got the same shoes on, same pants, same belt, flannel shirt. His mustache is trimmed the same way, same eye color. His watch is on the inside of his wrist. He comes in and he shares the gospel with me. And very, very simple message of like, you're trying to overcome something that you can't do in your own flesh. And you need God's help to do this and to beat this. And I gave my life to Christ, and I immediately, everything was different. Everything. And as he's leaving, he shakes my hand the same way my dad used to if I hadn't seen him in a few days. And he places his left hand over ours and winks at me and says, "I love you, son. I'll be back in here to see you again." And I told everybody about it. The guys I was doing time with, because I was such a wreck and I was crying, they were crying. Like the whole mood in that jail cell was completely changed. Mm-hmm. And from that point on, man, we would do Bible studies together. Like you got these guys that's ripping around in the streets their whole life, and we would do Bible studies together. We started working out together. I called my mom, and my mom said, "I knew in that moment you was completely different." I went from trying to get her to bond me out every day to like, leave me in here. Like God's doing something in my heart right now, and I need to let him see it through.
Wow.
And just that radical acceptance and trust that, and understanding that our addiction and those things that we were battling are outside doing push-ups in the parking lot waiting on us. And that's the mindset that I took. I'm like, I've got to get stronger, and I got to let God work on my heart so I can be prepared for life when that door pops and I walk out of here.
Wow.
And so that was the moment that everything changed.
How old were you when your dad died, and then you basically intentionally overdosed, and then when you accepted Christ?
I was 26, right at 27 when my dad passed, and I was 31 when I gave my life to Christ.
So you were in jail at 30, 31.
31.
How long were you in jail?
I did 6 months that time.
And then did you go back?
No.
So
thank God, yeah.
That's inspiring too, because, I mean, how long has your journey been? So get to the point where you start to transform your life. Was it right after getting out of jail?
Oh, it was when I was in jail.
Wow.
It was when I believe that self-discovery and understanding who we are comes through self-discipline, and that's the mindset that I took. I was like, I got to be disciplined while I'm in here. That way it'll carry over when I get outside. And so what I started to do, Gabe, was I'd read the scriptures every day. Maybe I need to go back to jail.
Well, it's funny. We're in an accountability group right now, and everybody shares at least one verse and an interpretation every day. And one of our friends, Tyler, he has a very similar story. He was addicted to meth, started selling, got into some bad stuff, and then he was in prison. And that's where he dedicated his life to Christ. And he was telling us this week or last week that one of his frustrations has been he hasn't been able to get back on fire with Christ since he was in prison, because all he did, he had no access to drugs, no access not only to drugs, but any vices or addictions. But all he did was basically work out, positive habits, and read the Bible. And he ended up leading a Bible study within the church, within the jail. So definitely sounds like a similar story to that.
Yeah.
But it makes sense, because I always talk about how if we don't consciously or intentionally battle our demons, or if we don't crush our demons will always crush our dreams and goals and purpose. And so you were put in an environment where you had to suffocate your demons. So by default, your spirit emerged. as far as the connection that you had with God. And then it brings up a different question as far as, does everybody have that relationship with God available? I believe they do, but it's the blockages and the things that are in the way, the interferences that are preventing us from being able to connect with that source or truth or spiritual connection. And right when you got out of that, by default, you were able to have more of a lens to connect with something supernatural. And I just think that's powerful as far as what happens when people are willing to take that step. And it was forced upon you, which was a blessing. So that's one perspective. If you feel like you're in an environment where things are forced on you, where negative habits and attachments are being removed out of your life, have the perspective shift that God's doing something in you for you so that you can get closer with him. There's a verse in James 2, I believe, about how you ask, but you do not receive, because when you receive, you will spend on your pleasures. And it's such a good insight to why we don't have what we think we want, when a lot of times it's really our ego that wants it. And it's because God's probably saying, if I hand you what you think you want, but your ego really wants, you'll just probably unconsciously turn that into an idol and then replace your relationship with me. So why would I actually give it to you? And so there's blessing and strength and perseverance that's developed in us when we don't get what we want necessarily. Mm-hmm. Obviously, in that environment, you didn't want that. You were like, I want to be back in the streets and out of this. But God was using you, and you were patient with him to find out what it was that he wanted from you. And then you found that relationship with God. So I think it's a cool perspective for people to think when they feel like, even money, a lot of times I'm struggling, I'm suffering, I'm hustling, God's not providing in the way that I need. It's like, you may not be ready for the blessing that you are thinking that you want right now. Mm-hmm. And I guess for somebody that's not in that forcible situation like jail, what insight could you draw from that as far as what you experienced that can inspire others to take that step to remove themselves for something greater? Because obviously in the moment we can't see that there's something bigger and better, but obviously when we endure through it, you were able to receive a blessing and a gift that was way more valuable than the lifestyle that you were living.
Man, I really believe that having that mentorship and that community is so important, and surrounding yourself with people that's going to challenge you. And that's one of the reasons that I was really excited about our conversation, because I know you're going to come with some thought-provoking questions, and this is going to be a very cathartic conversation. So I think that just surrounding yourself with people that, like last night, Jordan was like, how'd the marathon go? Talked about the marathon. He's like, all right, now's the real question. Like, how's your soul? And I'm like, oh, man. Surrounding yourself with people like that really care about those things, I think is really, really important. And that's how I've gotten to where I'm at today, is through that mentorship, through people challenging me, through those conversations. And I'm at my best whenever I'm in that alignment, So that's the advice that I would give somebody.
What was your answer to that question about your soul after that big achievement?
Oh, man, I'm physically strong but spiritually weak right now.
Why do you say that?
Just because I'm not spending enough time with God. I've put that on the back burner. Like I say, that alignment is not where it should be. And I know that for me to be able to lead, I've got to serve, I've got to honor God more so than I have been. I need to spend more time with God.
Let's talk about the contrast. So that was some of the lowest points and moments of your life. And then what you're doing now with the amount of people that you're inspiring and touching and helping and through coaching and all the other mediums. You just, I think, hit your personal record for a marathon. I know you're striving. I don't know if that achieved it, but Jordan, when he first was telling me about you, said that you were trying to break, I think, the world record for Native Americans or something, set some record there, if you could talk about that. But was that some of the most proud accomplishments that you've experienced, or were there even other things that may, to someone like us, seem like minor, but to you they were huge in those moments? But like, what are the things that you're most proud of as far as in your transformation from where you came from?
Creating our nonprofit and helping other people that's probably the thing I'm most proud of, because my athletic ability, my muscles, everything's going to atrophy, right? And the thing that I think is most important is how you're honoring God through your story, through your talent, through your ability, and building something that's going to be helping men, which I hope will be for generations after we're gone. Because this struggle, addiction, these things that we battle, that's not going anywhere. And so building something like this, Rezhope, the Kadoogie House, is probably one of my most proud accomplishments. Another thing that I'm really proud of is whenever I got out of jail, I wanted to sign up for the RTR ride, which is Remember the Removal Bike Ride. And I read this newspaper article when I was in jail about how our tribe does an event with Cherokee Nation in Oklahoma, and they ride the northern route, the Trail of Tears, from Georgia to Oklahoma. So when I seen that newspaper article, I'm like, when I get out of here, I'm signing up for that. Like, I want to challenge myself. I want to surround myself with positive community and be a part of this historical event. And so I go and I try to sign up for the RTR, and they tell me that I wasn't able to do it because I have a felony drug conviction on my record. Now, I could have allowed that to get me jaded, or that could have been a roadblock, opposition that stopped me. But I really believe that for us to become who God's called us to be, we have to look at opposition as opportunity. And so that's one of the things that I took. I was like, well, this is just, it's going to be an even, God's doing something different. Like, by them telling me no, I actually went to my council and I was advocating for a rule change. I was like, I think we should allow people to be part of this journey, blase. And they were like, we can't change the rule. So in the heat of the moment, I was like, well, if you're not going to let me ride the bike, I'll just run to Oklahoma. And that's how I started the whole running journey. Like, God's redirection. If I'd have rode that bike, we may not even be talking right now. Because that introduced me to running. That jump started our nonprofit. That was our first big fundraiser, was me running to Oklahoma.
So you did that?
Yeah.
Okay, go into that. I didn't know. I see on your social media, you're like, I'm going to run to LA next week. Like, I don't know.
2000, so they told me no, November of 2017. I'd been out of jail for 3 months. Signed up for an Ironman 70.3 8 weeks after I got out of jail. Come out of a 15-year addiction. Didn't sign up. I bought a bike the day before I went to do the race.
How was that? What inspired that to do an Ironman?
Goggins.
So you were in that headspace.
I was.
But you were just.
I need to do hard things. I need to do some challenging things.
And how old were you at that point? 31, 32?
30, yeah, 31, 32. So I buy a bike the day before, go down. I didn't do any swimming. I ran a half a mile. I rode the bike, though. I had a mountain bike I was riding the train on. And I got a road bike the day before. I go down, complete the Ironman. Dude, it was a shit show. It was crazy. But we got it done. And just remembering, like, when the why is strong, the how doesn't matter. And I remembered everything that I had came through, and I was not going to allow this endurance event to stop me. I wasn't going to allow that to be the challenge that was something I couldn't complete, right? And so completed that Ironman 70.3, and then I go to do the RTR ride to tell me no. So then I start training for the Trail of Tears run, 800 miles in 40 days. And
what's that average out to?
20 a day. Yeah. And this is a guy who just started running. May 14th, 2018, I started that journey. A lot of the same people that scoffed at me when I was trying for the rule change, council members, things like that, actually showed up for my send-off. And during that journey, man, it was crazy. It's crazy how God showed up. So we're getting regional coverage, Chattanooga, Knoxville, Alabama, working with some news stations and newspapers. And this girl who sees the story on Facebook from Texas messages me, and she's like, I need to tell you something. Can you call me on Messenger? I'm like, yeah. So I call her, and she was like, I have no idea what this means, but God put it on my heart that I need to tell you what I seen in this dream I had. She was like, as you're running, you've got these huge chains around your shoulders, around your neck. And she was like, you're struggling, but every step that you're taking, these chain links are breaking off of you. And I'm like, okay, whatever, this crazy Christian girl. Like, I don't know what she's talking about. Like,
was Forrest Gump made after you?
And
the beginning episode, he's like races.
Around that time, man, I was running to inspire other people that were struggling. I was running to inspire other people in recovery, my community, and just people that I had lost along the way, And my aunt passed away on that journey from endocarditis, complications. She had a heart attack. It was complications from her drug use. So I was at this crossroad moment, and I was like, I got to keep going. I got to finish this. This is why I started. So I got to see it through.
What day?
It was probably on week 3. My mom had to go back, do all the arrangements, bury my aunt.
More emotional battles versus physical?
Yeah, definitely. But also, too, that became the battery on my back even more so, because that's why I was doing it. And I know she would have wanted me to finish. So
how's that work? Like, you're just sleeping on the side of the road?
No, we got hotels. So we continue on, and mind you, this girl Ambry had shared this vision with me. And Caitlin's out running one day, so we'd go she'd go 3 miles ahead. I'd run to her, hydrate, fuel up. 3 miles ahead, I'd run to her. That's kind of the format that we were doing. So she's waiting on me to catch up to the truck. She goes out for a run, and where she stops to turn around to go back, she looks down and there's a chain link. So, we pick it up, coincidence, whatever. She comes back, oh, this is cool. I found this chain link. And so we save it. We keep heading west. We get to Osage, Arkansas, a few days later, week later. And I'm running down the road. I'm listening to Conway Twitty. That's my job. That's me and my dad's song, man. We love that. We love Conway Twitty. And I'm running down the road. I'm listening to Conway, and I'm thinking about my dad, and I'm like ugly crying. I can't believe, God, I'm out here doing this. This is incredible. And I look over to the side, and there's a sign that says McCoy's Garage. So all these things are just like lining up, right? And so I grab my phone and I take a selfie with McCoy's Garage in the background. And Gabe, where I stopped, I look down and there's a chain link right at my feet. And I'm like, all right, God, all right, we're right where we're supposed to be, right?
Wow.
A few days later, I'm running 49 miles in honor of my aunt. We stop. We're at mile 47-ish.
For the day?
For the day, yeah. And
after 3 weeks of running?
yeah.
It's crazy.
It was the night, yeah. So we're standing...
Without formal training for a 100 mile or anything. That's crazy.
I know. That's why this whole journey was so cool, because I had no experience. I didn't know what I was doing. I was very naive. I didn't care. If I was going to fail, I was going to fail, whatever. But so we're standing around the back of the truck. We're eating. It's 11 o'clock at night. It's dark. Caitlin screams, jumps back, and I'm like, God, she's got snake bit. And we look down, and where we stopped that night, there's a chain link at the back of the truck. And so these things, there's the 3 times that it happened on the journey.
Wow.
At pivotal moments of this journey, God showed up and gave us a sign. And this was how Rezhope was actually birthed. This was the genesis of our nonprofit, was this run.
Is that a common challenge that runners do?
What's that?
From wherever y'all started to Oklahoma or whatever?
No, I was the first one to do it.
Oh, wow. And how did it conclude?
We got to Tahlequah, Oklahoma, and we had a bunch of people come out and run with me. We had a welcoming ceremony. Like
strangers too?
Strangers. Yeah. You'll see it in the documentary tonight.
Nice.
Yeah. It retells that whole story and everything. So a lot of the council members, our tribal leadership, flew out to Oklahoma to watch me finish. Cherokee Nation leadership, they came. UKB, United Kadua Band, it's another band of Cherokees that's in Oklahoma. Their leadership came. And we still have connections with everybody. The chief out there in UKB.
Nice.
We still speak in Oklahoma. We go to the high school, share our story. So yeah.
Why do you think God was calling you to do that? And also, what chains exactly were you breaking on that challenge? Was it everything you just basically mentioned?
I think it was everything that I mentioned. I think it was the stigma that a lot of people in recovery have to battle. Getting those looks, people doubting you, people not giving you opportunities. I think, like Caitlin's got an amazing story. She was the first person our hospital hired that was a convicted felon. Like we were doing something different, and I believe that God was just showing like this. I'm doing something through you guys that's not been done before.
How would you describe what your purpose is, if you could?
Man, that's a dynamic purpose. I believe that God saved me to be able to lead my family because we have so much generational trauma. I'm exposing a lot of my family and friends to things that they'd never experienced before. Traveling the world, building a business, building a nonprofit, helping other people step into a higher version, the highest version of themselves, giving them strength, giving them hope. Honestly, trying to build something that's going to change lives. Like I said, for generations. I think my purpose is very dynamic, man. I mean, it's on a lot of levels. I think you and I have very similar, like the mediums that God is using through you, the podcast, the Bible study, like serving people, man, loving people and helping them step into their God-realized self.
The pain is definitely usually an answer to our purpose, what pain that we've been through and overcame, it's meant to be used for a greater good. I always say our greatest misery is meant to be used for our most powerful ministry, or turning traumas into commas, or turning your biggest pain into your greatest gain, for sure. Man, yeah. So that challenge happened, and then
2018.
Any other crazy challenges after that?
We biked the Pacific Coast Highway in 2019 from Canada to Mexico.
Canada to Mexico. Wow. You
and your wife got to do it, bro. Do it, man. Yeah, that was right after we got married too, so it was tough.
She's been on the journey the whole time through all your crazy challenges.
She was not running, but she was like, all right, if I want to keep this guy, I want to have to start running.
You got to get her on the podcast next.
Oh, for sure. For sure. Anything else? No, man. I mean, just like building my business with coaching.
How do people who are struggling with maybe past or possibly even current drug addiction, felonies on their record, or all these things that society will label as not being able to succeed or it being harder to succeed, how did you break through those barriers, and how would you encourage others to do the same? Because you trailblaze your own path, which is amazing. You didn't have to go to school for what you're doing, but we're not limited by that anymore as far as not having felonies or having a college degree or having a traditional job. We can do whatever it is that our soul is calling us to do. But how did you gain that courage and boldness to actually step into it?
Taking risks. Not being afraid to fail. Serving, man. I think serving, like whenever we started the nonprofit, we started doing Thanksgiving dinners. We started doing community events. We started to gain a lot of support. People were very skeptical for good reason, right? When we first came out of jail and we were trying to do something different. And I think a lot of people, because they've seen it time and again, were waiting on us to fail. We're waiting on us to fall. And that was just motivation for us. That was a fire for us. That was the battery on our back. And so, but making those connections through serving, through sharing our story, through talking to kids, like everybody was like, okay, like they're different. They're different. They're giving back. How can we support you guys? And so I think just being really, really consistent with that, honestly, has gotten us to where we're at today.
I think it's a great answer. I think it's the two things that you promote and are very passionate about, which is number one, if we don't know our purpose, our passion, or our place, start with mastering ourselves mentally, spiritually, physically. You can never go wrong there. Develop yourself mentally, spiritually, and physically, and by default, you'll gain clarity around what your purpose is, but also supplement mind, body, and spirit growth with serving. If we don't know where to start, the best place that we could start is with ourselves and serving others intensely, and through doing those two things, we'll fall in what we're passionate about. And it doesn't have to be traditional. It can be completely unconventional, like what you're doing through building a nonprofit and a recovery center and a social media brand around helping others crush marathons and doing running and being a running coach. I mean, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, they might have had that, but not like they do today. You know?
Yeah.
So, but you created your own path based on your passions and the pains that you specifically went through so that you can resonate with others that may face similar challenges. What were you going to add?
I was going to say that, there's a quote, like, if we're not serving, we're not recovering. We're not serving, we're not healing, we're not growing. And so Caitlin's challenged me a lot here lately because she's like, you got to get back into speaking, you got to get back into talking to these kids, you got to get back in and pouring into these guys, just allowing the busyness of life and my own goals to kind of, I guess cause me to step away from my purpose and what God's called me to do.
Yeah, we get caught up, we get distracted for sure by the things, the worldly needs that we feel like are more present or priority in our life. We all struggle with that. What does that look like? How could you start getting more involved? I mean, I know maybe we could transition into the documentary. I know you're doing that tonight, for example. Is it a tour in a couple cities? If you could explain to everybody what that documentary is and what the projects are that you're passionate about and working on now.
So the documentary is called A Runner's High, and it's about 20 minutes long, short doc, and it's basically broken up into 3 parts. It tells my story of addiction. When I came to faith in jail, the Trail of Tears run, and then it transitions over to what we're doing now in my relationship with my sons, or lack thereof, the struggle that I have now today with that. And I share in a documentary, it's probably one of the biggest struggles of mine is trying to build that, trying to help us, trying to figure out how we can get into we don't really communicate at all, man. And I want that relationship to be restored, and I know that God will eventually. So I just got to keep doing what I'm doing. But yeah, we've been showing the documentary in different cities. We've been to Boulder, Colorado, and it's a good way for us to segue and to get support for our nonprofit organization. Caitlin will usually come in and speak and share a little bit about the nonprofit, but we've been in Boulder, we've been Utah, we've been Oklahoma. Obviously, we're down here in Atlanta. I'm going to Nashville in a couple at the beginning of the year. Going to New York City, downtown Manhattan, beginning of the year. And
what's your connection with Atlanta? How do you know a lot of people here?
So Watts Dantzler passed the torch. Watts and I met at the Georgia Jewel. Yeah. And I was like a little cocky. I was like, this big dude, he's not going to run 100 miles. There's no way. So then Watts proceeds to beat me by 2 hours.
Really?
Yeah. So I was like, I got to know this guy. And I reached out to him on social media. That's when we had our podcast. And I said, dude, I've got to hear your story. I got to know how you got into running. And so he's like, yeah, come on down. And Caitlin and I were still early on in recovery, and we're like, these complete strangers are inviting a couple of convicted felons like to their house. Don't know who we are. So we go meet him and his wife, Colleen.
Sounds like Watts. He's a great guy.
And we met Jordan Utley around that same time, 3 years ago this month. We met Jordan standing in the backyard, and she was talking about doing her first 100-miler. And so I got real involved with the community, passed the torch, Watts, Jordan.
Nice.
And then that just took a life of its own. And now I coach anywhere from 4 to 8 people at any given time down here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always thought like a lot of your clients were here in Atlanta, which is
I just need to move down here with you guys, man. I've been saying that.
yeah. Well, amazing, man. I think that's it. I'm excited for the documentary event tonight. Any other things that you want to share as far as maybe your running coaching, if anybody has a goal or is thinking about it or inspired to run a race? Do you specialize in a specific race or marathon or?
So, I mean, I coach anything from 5K up to ultra marathons. My specialty, my favorite distance to coach is the marathon. But I work with anybody from beginners to somebody trying to BQ. And we've got an amazing community on Instagram. I've got over 60 athletes in that community. I'm coaching currently about 45. I've got an assistant coach who helps me as well. So, yeah, man, you definitely get a lot of support. I love to help people to accomplish things that they never thought were possible. And so if you got the work ethic, if you got a big goal, then hit me up on Instagram at _recoveryline86. And also, too, my website is lionsdenfitness.com. Lionsdenfitnessandrunning.com. So
Love
we can
it.
link
Yeah,
it.
what was that PR last week?
236.42, baby.
What's that average?
5:59.
Yeah.
I've been working for that for over 2.5 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
So if you want to get your time down, this guy's definitely the one to hire.
I want to try to get this guy doing a 1 mile PR. Try to get him to 5 minute flat.
Come on, let's go. Appreciate you, brother.
Hey, man, appreciate it.